Hi, Dr. Michelle here with some more secrets of life and death. Today, I'm going to be talking about vibrant health. Health is not a matter of luck. It's not a matter of bad genes. It's not an accident. It's not necessarily an invasion of the body snatchers. It's about how you are in your body. We are spiritual beings, and we come into these bodies and we form an alliance with these bodies. And how we treat these bodies has a big impact on how they thrive or suffer. And your body is constantly trying to tell you things about how you're doing. It's speaking to you. So I personally believe, based on my training in psychosomatics, psychosocial analyst, PhD, that the body uses health and symptoms to communicate to us, to tell us what's going on and what we need to do. Sometimes it seems like our spirit and our body are in conflict. That what the spirit wants, which is for us to fulfill our purpose, might be terrifying to our body, which resists it. That's why I encourage people to heal the emotional wounds underneath. Heal the emotional wounds, and very often you have an improvement in health. The body basically has two words, good and bad, in the form of pleasure and pain. And yes, there's a whole continuum along there. But you know the difference between good and not good. And what I have found is that the body tends to turn up the volume when we don't listen. So maybe you get a cut or a scratch. You say, well, I was working in the garden, of course. And then you nearly drop something on your foot. And you say, well, I was just not paying attention. Yes, maybe you weren't paying attention. And the reason you weren't is maybe you've been too busy. Maybe you're tired. Maybe you're pushing too hard. And so your body has a way of telling you, wake up. I encourage you not to wait until your body really turns up the volume, because at a certain point, those little messages from your body can turn into real live medical complaints. And then it isn't enough to just change your mind. So for example, I broke my toe the other day, and okay, I get the message. Yes, I'm pushing too hard. I need to slow down. I need to take more breaks. I need to be more relaxed. But meanwhile, my toe's broken. And it's going to take physical time for that toe to heal itself. And meanwhile, I can't walk. Well, I can't walk. I can hobble along, but I normally walk every day of the week. I get out there, I walk for 45 minutes to an hour and a half every day. So this is like, whoa, this is a big change for me. So what's going on in your health? Is your body speaking to you? And that's what I believe our body is doing. It's speaking, it's saying something to us. And maybe it's your spirit speaking through your body. Maybe your spirit sometimes throws some monkey wrenches in to help wake you up. So there may be some coordination between the two. But let me give you some examples. I have a training in psychosomatics, and there is actually an interpretation for almost everything that's going on in your body. And it's really straightforward and makes a whole lot of sense. So for example, hi Mira, thank you for joining. Really good to see you. So for example, your body structure, your skeleton has to do with more grounded physical issues of support and stability, whereas the emotions have to do, or the muscles have to do with connections and how your flexibility and how you're moving through life in that way. Whereas the fluids in your body, like the lymph and the blood vessels, that all has to do with emotions. So these different parts of our body are saying different things to us, and there is a message. Once you learn how to speak body speak, you can actually listen to what your body has to say. Although I take it a step further and can teach you how to actually listen in and let your body speak directly to you. And if you want to know more about any health issue that's coming up for you that might be holding you back, book a call with me. There's a link in the comment section that has my scheduler link, or send me a comment. We can have a 15-minute introductory call, and I can help you to identify what your body is saying to you. And we can also determine whether or not it can help you or we're a good match. So I wanted to give you a few more examples of how the body was talking to my clients. So I had one client who came to me because she was having neural discomfort in her skin, and she was having itchiness and tiredness in her eyes. Well, hello. She was working 70 hours a week. Her body was screaming at her, and her eyes were itching and were red and were uncomfortable because those eyes were saying, take a look. You're not paying attention. Look, see what's going on. I had another client who came to me, and she was mostly homebound, and she was in grief because she had lost her mother, and we worked together, and gradually she started to connect with her community and to take more active interest in her life, and her health has improved 100%. You may not realize this, but how we live our lives has a huge influence on our body, and there needs to be a balance. Yes, you want to work on stuff that you really enjoy, but if that's all you do and you never take any time out, if you never really appreciate this body, your body's going to let you know. So another example, I had a client who came to me after she had had a lung transplant. So what is the lungs about? The lungs are about breathing, about space. And indeed, she had been spending much of her time taking care of her dad and taking care of his business needs and not really pursuing her artistic desires, her impetus to be a filmmaker. And so she wasn't really breathing. Now that is a pretty serious message from the body. And yes, there may be some genetic predisposition. Nevertheless, one of the first things that I worked with her on was welcoming those lungs, because they are living tissue. And if you want to stay alive, you want to make sure that those lungs feel safe. And of course, your own immune system is saying, who are you? Get out of here, get out of here. So you need to work with your body parts, especially if you've had a transplant. You need to create a harmony between your own body and the new parts, the new part of yourself. And that could be foreign tissue, or that could be, like a hip replacement. And you think, well, I can understand a lung, that's living tissue, but what about this metal thing in my... Well, I believe that even metal has an energy and is responsive to how we receive it, how we accept it. So I've been going a little far afield, but let's go back to the issues. My father died from Alzheimer's. I believe he started getting the Alzheimer's shortly after his business failed, and he had to get a new job at a tech college. And his purpose, he lost his purpose. And so he checked out. To understand how the body responds and reacts, it's helpful to understand that at the most basic level, the body has this survival mechanism of fight, flee, freeze. And if you take it a little bit more metaphorically, you can see how the body and your mind incorporate those things. So my father was, in a sense, he was fleeing because he did not need to know what to do about the fact that he was no longer living his purpose. And Alzheimer's is one of the solutions as well. I just won't think about it. I won't think at all. So I invite those of you who are out there who are getting older, it's really important to continue to have purpose and meaning in your life. My own in-laws, it was very sad. They were put in a senior home where the other members of the household had dementia, and basically they were bored to death, and they died in a few years. I mean, I suppose if that's your purpose, is to get your parents to die quickly, put them into a place where there is no more meaning or no more purpose, and they sit around and they're bored to death. That's a good way to get them to leave early, because what else is there to do? Now, I happen to believe that, yes, there may be some time in your life, again, I'm getting a little far afield, there may be a time in your life when you're sick, or maybe when you're dying, when there's a time when you feel frustrated because you can't do anything. You have to stop being a human doing and start being a human being. And how do you make meaning out of that? Well, there's always something you can do. And that's what I work with my clients on, is teaching them how to have meaningful lives no matter how restricted they are in their bodies, to find the meaning for themselves. We, as human beings, are meaning seekers, and our well-being and the well-being of our body really is grounded in how we make sense of why we're here. It's hugely important. That's why my major mission is to empower people like you, healers, coaches, people who are change makers in the world, to find what your purpose is and to get the tools to fulfill your purpose and to remove the blocks, particularly the emotional blocks that might be holding you back. Which brings me back to the body. When we come into these bodies as brilliant beings, as drops of the divine illumination, and we have this purpose, we come into these bodies when they're very, very vulnerable, when they're very dependent upon their caregivers, their parents, for support. And we, as human beings, we're a very special kind of animal. We need more than just food and shelter and clothing and health care. We actually need love, physical affection and attention. And this is not something I'm making up. The latest studies in neuropsychology have proved that in the first 5 years, the child is developing the neural networks in their brain. And if they do not get that kind of attention, it really does damage to their ability to connect and relate to other human beings, to feel worthwhile, to feel worthy. I also happen to believe, and a lot of the research bears me out, is that we are neuroplastic. We have neuroplastic brains, that we can actually change that programming. But it does take work. And that's the kind of work I do with my clients, is to help to change the programming. And it's, yes, tapping helps. My experience, though, is that you have to start with the emotional energy underneath. So that takes me back to the fight, flee, freeze. The human body, at a very primitive level, has this mechanism of survival. It has the internal mechanism, which is our immune system, but it has this external mechanism of fight, flee, freeze. And when that gets triggered, when this body feels threatened, when this body doesn't feel safe, that survival mechanism gets triggered. The thing is that a lot of things that upset us or make us afraid have nothing to do with an immediate threat of some predator. It's more of a social threat. And the social threat is real. When you think about a baby, if the relationship between its parents is not good, that child could die. That child is totally dependent upon its parents. And even throughout life, hi, thank you for joining. Even throughout life, we are dependent upon other human beings to thrive. We are social, and we are actually wired to bond with each other. And when we feel unworthy or unloved or unappreciated, or worst of all, we feel rejected, this has a huge influence on our health and our success in life. The problem is that when we're children, we often develop these patterns that keep us alive and thrive when we're children, but as we grow older, they don't work so well. And I have a number of Facebook Lives that talk about all the different patterns, but I want to stay in today on focusing on the health. One of the patterns is to tamp down our emotions, to repress them. Part of it is what our parents teach us, but part of it is also what our culture teaches us. We are a very rational, logical, scientific-based culture, and emotions are often associated with being too childish, a crybaby, too female, emotional, hormonal. And so to have emotions is seen as being less than, as not being competent, as not being valuable. But it's a big, big, big mistake, because we actually need our emotions not only to stay healthy, but to make the slightest decision. This amazing neuroscientist, Antonio Damasio, did a study of people who had had brain damage to the emotional, the limbic system area of their brain, and they were not able to make the slightest decisions. So we need our emotions, and we need to be fluent in our emotions, and we need to know how to manage them. Otherwise, they kind of flare up, and they can get us in trouble, or we repress them so much that they show up as physical dis-ease. You say, well, how does that happen? Well, when we get triggered, there are chemicals that get released into our body to prepare us to fight, flee, freeze. But that mechanism of fight, flee, freeze is supposed to be very temporary. Long enough for you to pull the car off of your child or to fight away the mad, angry dog. But it's not supposed to stay there for months and years. And that's the problem, is that we hold it in, and this actually gets translated, first of all, into stress, and second of all, literally into our posture. So if maybe you had a rather unpleasant parent, a father, for example, who was too critical, and most of your life you've been wanting to punch him, but you can't because you're a child and you learn to hold it back, that it literally affects the alignment of your shoulders. And all these physical manifestations have an impact over time. Now, you may not notice this misalignment of your shoulders or maybe misalignment of your hips until you're way into your middle age, because it doesn't impact. But later on, it has an impact on the free flow of the fluids in your body, and can also create diseases and cancer. That's why I work with people to heal the emotional wounds. because they are operating even though you can't see them, even though you think you've got them managed. I had a meetup this past Sunday, and people were telling me, oh, I figured it out, I'm fine. They're fine because they have developed a pattern of repressing their feelings that is successful, so they don't feel. They have no idea. And my heart goes out to them because I was there. I was like that for years. I existed from my head up, and I had no awareness of my body, except, when it was hungry or I actually hurt something, and then I would fix it, but I didn't have any awareness of my emotions. In fact, I didn't even know what I liked to do. I was so busy focusing on what I needed to do to please other people and to survive in the world. I never even thought about it. I had a huge wake-up call shortly before my mother died. And my mother, she died of breast cancer. Breasts, this whole area here is about love. And indeed, I believe that in some ways, she never got enough love. And that influences us because, we sort of hold it in. We hold that area, we tighten that area. And breasts are about nurturance. Are you getting enough nurturance? Are you being loved? I'm going to check my notes for a minute here. I want to go back to another really key point that I was making, which is living your purpose. For years, I didn't even have the concept purpose. My only purpose was to please other people so that they would give me attention. And that was the pattern I had. And a lot of people have that pattern. They don't even know that their focus is out there instead of in here. So the healing often involves a lot of learning about yourself. But you want to learn about your higher self and what that mission is. Otherwise, you can get caught up in that ego. And she has, or he has, their own agenda about how things should be. And a lot of that has to do with being safe and feeling pleasure and having a good time. But that may not be what your spirit, what your brilliance wants. So sometimes there's a little conflict. What I work with my clients on is developing the balance between the body, your mind, and your brilliance. And while you're at it, we throw in the community. Remember, I already told you that we are social creatures. We are wired to bond. And how our community responds to us has a huge impact on how we feel. What I teach, what I help my clients with, is to be discerning, to recognize when the issue is something, the feedback they're getting is something they need to do something about, or whether it's the problem of the other person. So that you set boundaries so that you can really step into your power. I'm all about empowerment. So here's an interesting statistic. 1 out of 6 Americans is on some kind of psychiatric drug. What's that about? Why are all these people needing psychiatric drugs? I mean, we weren't born to be that way. Well, you know what? This culture is very stressful because we spend all our time, or so much of our time, tamping down our emotions and also ignoring who we are and what we're meant to be doing. As children, we learn to play it safe because we don't want to be rejected. And then that becomes a pattern over time because we're successful. Or maybe we're not successful and then we become rebellious and we become obnoxious and we can get really into big trouble. So part of the healing process is not only releasing the emotional energy that you've been tamping down in here, but actually stepping into your true purpose, finding out what that is. And by the way, that is not a big mystery. We can find that out. It's more difficult is actually going out and fulfilling your purpose actually going out and becoming bigger, more empowered. That's what takes the work. Oh, so, right, 1 out of 6 are on psychiatric drugs. And you know what? That doesn't even account for all the rest of us who are self-medicating through drinking and drugs and eating and overeating and computer games and workaholism. The problem with workaholism is this culture thrives on people being workaholics. And it's only when your body says enough and you get sick that most of us ever even stop. And then, it's like it's too late. You're like stopped cold. It's a terrible, it's not the best time. It's better to start to notice what is going on with you right now, right here, right now. What is your body telling you? What are the subtle signs? Do you feel exhausted? Do you feel like you lack energy? Do you feel like you lack motivation? Is it hard to focus? Do you feel like life is meaningless? Do you put all of your joy in the hands of somebody else, like your partner? I hate to say it, but I worked in hospice with partner loss, in a partner loss support group for years. And I cannot tell you how many times I found these women who came in who felt like they had lost the love of their life. And they were devastated because actually what they had done is put all their eggs in that one basket and required that person to be everything for them. It's too much of a burden. We need to take responsibility for ourselves. I want to say there are no accidents, that everything that happens, whether it's an illness that comes from a flu, or there's an accident on the highway, or there is, you suddenly get cancer, or you have heart problems, everything, I believe, is our inner guides trying to wake us up, to say, pay attention. Don't wait until they get really big and loud. Now you might ask me, well, what about the children? Why do children get disease? And why am I addressing this? Because I know you're going to use that as an out and say, well, what about the children? Here's my belief. Sometimes they are angels that come to wake us up, that they come into this world for a short amount of time, for that specific purpose. And they are so pure of spirit that they have no work to do in this world. And once they have fulfilled their purpose, they leave. I happen to believe that death is not a punishment. Even illness is not a punishment. Although it certainly can hurt, it is your body and your brilliance trying to get you back on your path. Okay, I've covered a lot of territory here. I invite you to have a conversation with me if you are interested in what I've said. Remember, your health is your responsibility. And if your body is telling you that things are not okay, listen up before it gets too late. And does it get too late? Yes, it sometimes does get too late and you cannot pull it back. Although you may still be able to make progress. Even people who have cancer, even people who are dying, can still have a mission and purpose. But do you really want to wait until then? Life has so much to offer. There is so much beauty, so much vitality, so much love that you can have. So listen up. Listen to your body. That's it for today. Be brilliant and bye.